be on how to find the volume of a cylinder. And if you remember what a cylinder is, it has a top and a bottom that's a circle. It's a three-dimensional shape. And if you remember how to find the area of a circle, it's pi r squared. What that means is the radius times 3.14. And that's really important for finding the volume, because the formula for finding the volume of a cylinder is just base times height. And so the base of a cylinder is a circle. So you're going to do 3.14 times the radius, and then times the height of the cylinder. So I have a few examples that I want to start off looking at with you. And I would really recommend that you have a calculator for all of these, because you're going to do quite a bit of calculations to find out the volume of a cylinder. So if you look at this first part here, it simply reminds you that the base of a cylinder is a circle. So if you look right here, what that means is you're still doing pi r squared. So remember, radius is from the center of a circle to the edge. So it's halfway across the circle. And then you're doing times the height to find the volume, okay? So if you look at this example right here, it says pi times 3 squared. That's because 3 is the radius. So you're doing 3 times 3.14, that's pi. And then you're multiplying all of that times the height, which is 6. And that's where they get this right here. This is pi r squared times the height. So they're saying it's 169.6 cubic meters. It's cubic because it's three-dimensional. Remember, volume is you're filling the space inside a three-dimensional shape. If you look at this one down here, they give you the diameter, the distance all the way across. Remember, you don't want the diameter, you want the radius for the area of a circle. And so half of 10 would be the radius. So for this one, you'd have 5 times pi times the height. The height of this one is 4 times 4. And then you would find the volume down here. You look down here, they've got another example. This is the radius, that's what you want. So you're going to do, for volume, you're going to do pi r squared. So 4 times 4, that's the radius squared. You know that's 16. Times 3.14 times the height of the cylinder, which is 15. So I know 4 times 4 is 16 times 3.14. So let's pull up our calculator. 16 times 3.14 equals 50.24. So I'm going to write 50.24 times the height times 15. So let's find out what that is. Times 15. I get 753.6. 753.6. Now we would label this, the units are feet. We'd say feet cubed, again, because it's three-dimensional. You're finding the space inside. Let's look at a few more down here. Again, I would recommend that you have some paper to look at some of these examples with me. Okay, so for number 1 right here, number 3, the radius is 9. So let's write out our formula. So to find the volume of a cylinder, I'm doing radius times the radius times pi times 6. So we know 9 times 9 is 81. 81 times 3.14 is 254.34. And I'm going to multiply that times 6 to find out the volume. And it says round your answer to the nearest tenth. I got 1,526.04. So I'm going to round that to just 1,526 feet cubed. Let's look at this one. So they're giving me the whole distance across. Remember what that's called? That's called diameter. So half of 3 is going to be 1.5 times 1.5 times 3.14 times the height of the cylinder, which is 3. So if I have 1.5 times 1.5, I get 2.25 times pi. I get 7.065 times 3. That's the height. And that equals 21.195, which I would round up to 21.2. This is going to equal 21.2 meters cubed for number 4. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger so it's easier for you to see. Let's look at number 5 here. This one, they give us the radius, which is great. So radius squared is 7 times 7, or 49, times pi, times the height. So I know 7 times 7 is 49. So I'm going to type 49 times pi. And I get 153.86. I'm going to multiply that times 5, which equals 769.3. And we'd say feet cubed. Okay, let's look at number 6. Then I'm going to give you a chance to do a couple of these on your own. So I know 5 is the radius. So 5 squared is going to equal 25 times 3.14 times 10. The 25 times pi is going to equal 78.5 times 10. And I know when I multiply by powers of 10, I just move the decimal to the right one step. So this is going to equal 785 feet cubed. Okay, take a minute, try number 7 and 8, and if you have any questions, just ask, and then we'll go over those together. Okay, if you have a calculator, hopefully that went pretty quick. So let's look at number 7. You're doing radius squared, so that means 3 times 3 times pi times the height, which is 10. So let's work that out together. So I have 3 times 3 is 9. 9 times 3.14. I got is 28.26. Times the height. So I'm just going to move this decimal one space to the right. So I'm just going to be 282.6 millimeters cubed. And if you got 282.6, you're on the right track. All right, let's look at number 8. So radius squared would be 2 times pi, that's the area of the circle or the base, times the height, which is just 1. So now 2 times 2 is 4. I know 4 times pi is 12.56 times 1 is still 12.56. Now if we round this to the nearest tenth, like the directions say, we would round this up to 12.6. And I would label it feet cubed for number 8. Let's look at a few more. Okay, so for number 9, 3 is the radius. So again, I have 3 times pi times 7. Now, in our other example right up here, we had that 3 times pi, and that equaled 28.26. But we're multiplying it by a height of 7. So 28.26 times 7, I got 197.82. If we round that to the nearest tenth, that would just be 0.8. So let's write 197.8 inches cubed. For number 9. Okay, number 10, they're giving you the diameter. That's not what you want for the area of a circle. You want half of that. So half of 15, if you divide it by 2, is 7.5. So I'd have 7.5 squared times pi times the height. So I got 56.25. If I multiply that by pi, I got 176.625 times the height. So I got 883.125, and I would just round that to 883.1 meters cubed for number 10. Okay, in the same sense, number 11 is giving you the diameter again. You want half of that. So I would have 4 times 4 times pi times the height. So I know 4 times 4 is 16. And I know 16 times pi is going to be 50.24. And I want to multiply that by 16. And I get 803.84, and I would just round that to 0.8. 803.8 centimeters cubed for number 11. A few more examples. Let me see if I can magnify this a little bit to make it easier for you to see. Okay, that's pretty good. All right, so again, our volume of a cylinder is going to be pi r squared, that's the base, times the height, okay? Or base times height. So the base of this circle here, I've got a radius of 5. So I want 5 times 5 times pi times the height, which is 12. So I know 5 times 5 is 25 times pi is 78.5 times 12. I got 942 kilometers cubed. Let's look at number 2 together. So my radius is 11, so I'm going to multiply 11 times 11, which is 121, times pi, times a height of 7. So 121 times pi is 379.94 times the height is going to be 2,659.58 miles cubed for number 2. Okay, take a minute and look at number 3 and 4, and I'll check back with you after you have a chance to try that on your own. Be careful of number 4 because they're giving you the diameter there. You want half of that. Okay, hopefully that was enough time for number 3. I know my radius is 6, so 6 times 6 is 36 times pi times the height. So 36 times pi, I got 113.04 times 11. I got 1,243.44. Make sure you label this yards cubed for number 3. Okay, now number 4, remember you want half of 4 because 4 is the diameter and our formula is the radius squared, which turns out to be 4 anyway. 2 times 2 times pi times 10. So I know 4 times pi is 12.56. And I'm multiplying by a power of 10. So I'm just going to move the decimal one step to the right. So this becomes 125.6 cubic yards. Okay, let's look at number 5 and 6. Just take a minute and try those on your own. Remember, you want half of 24 for the radius. Okay, take a look at that on your own. Okay, let's take a look at number 5. So my diameter is 24, so I know half of that's the radius. So that's going to be 12 squared times pi times the height. So now 12 times 12 is 144 times pi is going to be 452.16 times 11. And that's going to give me a volume of 4,973.76 cubic kilometers for number 5. Okay, let's look at number 6. So they're giving me the radius. That's what we want. So I have 4 squared times pi times 10. So I know 16 times pi is 50.24. I'm multiplying by a power of 10. So I'm going to move the decimal one space to the right. And I'm going to get 502.4 cubic meters for number 6. Okay, let's take a look at number 7 and 8. This is the diameter. That's not what you want for the area of the circle. You want the radius. So half of 18 is the radius, which is 9. So I have 9 times 9 times pi times the height, which is 12. So I know 9 times 9 is 81 times pi is going to be 254.34 times the height of 12, which is going to equal 3,052.08 cubic feet for number 7. Let's look at number 8. Again, that's the diameter, so you want half of that for the radius, which would be 7. So I've got 7 squared, 7 times 7, times pi, times the height. So I know 7 times 7 is 49, times pi is going to be 153.86 times 5 is going to equal 769 and 3/10 cubic meters for number 8. Take a minute, look at 9 and 10 on your own. I'll check back with you.
Hey, Mr. Ramsey,
Yeah, Zakia.
this still isn't kind of making sense to me. Like, so I'm confused. Do you do night?
Go ahead.
So I'm
Talk me
confused
through
by
number 9. What would you multiply?
the confusing part to me is when let's go to the last problem. So if it's 14, I don't get why you're doing 7 times 7 instead of like are you supposed to try to get to the what?
Okay, so you're doing 7 times 7 because the formula for the area of a circle is pi r squared. And 14 is the diameter. That's the whole distance across the circle. You don't want that to find the area of a circle. You want the radius. So here's a circle. This is the bottom of a cylinder. The distance from the center to a side is called the radius.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So to find the area of a circle, you take the radius squared, you multiply it by itself, times pi. So the whole way to find the volume of a cylinder is simply base times height. But we know the base of a cylinder is a circle. So you go back to your area of a circle, which is pi r squared, and you just multiply that by the height. So that's why we didn't multiply it by 14. We did 7 times 7, because 7 is half of 14. That's from here to the side. And we square it, which means you take the radius, which in this case is 7. 7 times 7 times 3.14, and then times the height. So for number 9 over here, they give you what you want, Zakia. They give you the radius. See how it's halfway from here to the edge of a circle? That's
Yes.
what you want. So you do 2 times 2, that's the radius squared. Okay? And then you do times pi. And that gives you the area of the circle down here, or the base. So when it says volume equals base times height, that's what you're doing right here. 2 times 2 times 3.14. And then once you figure that out, then you multiply it by the height of the cylinder, which is 6. So I know 2 times 2 is 4. And we know that 4 times pi is 12.56. I have 12.56. Then the last thing is you multiply it times the height. And you get 75.36. And this is all the space inside the cylinder, okay? And that's why we use cubic units, because it's 3-dimensional. So I'm going to say cubic feet here. This is not surface area. It's not the space outside the cylinder. It's the space inside. That's why we call it volume. So for number 10, I don't want 20, because that's called the diameter. I want the distance from the edge of the circle to the center. That's radius. So half of 20 would be 10. So 10 times 10 is radius squared times pi, and then times the height. So you know 10 times 10 is 100. And I'm going to move my decimal 2 spaces for 100. So I just have 314 times 8. And I know that's 2,512 cubic centimeters for number 10. Let's look at a few more. The more of these you do, the easier it gets. After a while, you get the formula pretty quick. Take a look at number 1, 2, and 3. So for number 1, it's 6 times 6 times 3.14 times 11. For number 2, you're multiplying 4 times 4 times 3.14 times 13. For number 3, you want half of 10. So you do 5 times 5 times 3.14 times 9. Take a minute, try those out, and I'll get back to you. Okay, let's look at this first one here. So I'm doing 6 times 6 times pi times 11. So let's break that down. 6 times 6 is 36. Times pi is going to be 113.04 times the height, which is 11, which is going to equal 1,243.44 cubic meters for number 1. Let's look at number 2. So I've got a radius of 4, so I'm doing 4 times pi times the height. So I know 4 times 4 is 16, times pi is going to be 50.24 times 13 is going to equal 600. That's kind of a crazy 6. All right, let's try that again. That's going to equal 653.12 inches cubed. And number 3, remember, we want half of 10 from the edge to the center. So for this, the radius would be 5. So you're multiplying 5 times pi times the height. So I know 25 times pi is 78.5 times 9. I'm going to get 706.5 cubic centimeters for number 3. Okay, let's scroll down a little bit. Take a look at 4, 5, and 6. If you have any questions, just speak up. Okay, so for number 4 here, they give you the diameter. You want half the diameter, which would be 3. 3 is half of 6. So pi r squared would mean 3 times 3 times 3.14 times the height. So I know 3 times 3 is 9 times pi times the height. Let's break that down. 9 times pi is 28.26 times 5 is going to equal a volume of 141.3 cubic meters for number 4. Let's look at number 5. So they give me the radius. That's great. So I've got 7 times 7 times pi, and the height is 15. So I know 7 times 7 is 49, times pi is going to be 153.86, times the height of 15 is going to equal 2,307.9. And this is volume, so you're going to have cubic feet. Okay, let's look at number 6. So I've got a diameter of 8. I want half of that. So my radius is going to be 4. Okay, so I have 4 times pi times a height of 8. So now 4 times 4 is 16 times pi is 50 0.24. I want to multiply that by the height to get the volume. So the height is 8. So my volume is going to be 401.92 cubic millimeters for number 6. Okay, let's look at a couple more. Take a minute, look at 7, 8, and 9. If you have any questions, speak up and I'll come right back to you.
Say, what's 4 plus 4, Mr. Ramsey?
Which question are you on? Are you on number 7? Okay, let's look at number 7 together. So this is the diameter. For this formula, I want the radius. So half of 10 is going to be the radius of 5. So I'm going to multiply 5 times 5 times pi. And that's going to give me the area of the base. And I want to multiply it by the height to get the volume. So I know 5 times 5 is 25. Times pi is 78.5. And I multiply that by the height of 11. And that would equal 863.5 cubic centimeters. Let's look at number 8. So my radius is 7. So I've got 7 times 7 times pi times a height of 13. So I know 7 times 7 is 49 times pi is going to be 153.86 times 13. And that's going to equal 2000.18 cubic inches for number 8. Here's number 9. My radius is 3. So I have 3 times 3, that's radius squared, times pi, times the height, which is 7. So 3 times 3 is 9. I know 9 times pi is 28.26. Times the height is going to give me the volume, which is going to be 197.82 cubic meters for number 9. Okay, let's take a look down here. I think that the next example I want to give you has a few that are pretty simple. I think most of these give you the radius. Some of them give you the diameter, like C here gives you 10. You want half of that. So let's look at A together. So from my formula here, volume of a cylinder is base times height. And we know that that means the base is a circle and the area of a circle is pi r squared times the height. Okay, so that means 4 times 4, that's the radius times the radius, times pi, that's 3.14, times the height. So let's figure that out. 4 times 4 is 16, times pi is going to be 50.24, and I'm multiplying by a power of 10. That means I'm just going to move the decimal point 1 step for every 0. So if there's 1 0 in 10, I move the decimal 1 space to the right. So this would be 502.4 cubic centimeters for A. Let's look at B. Again, this is half the distance across the circle. That's the radius. We want that. So I'm going to have 8 times 8 times pi. That gives me the area of the base, times the height, which is 30. So I know 8 times 8 is 64, times pi is going to equal 200.96 times the height, which is 30. And that's going to equal 6,000 28.8 cubic centimeters for part B. Okay, let's look at C. Notice on this question, they're giving you the distance all the way across. You don't want that. That's the diameter. You want halfway across, which is the radius. So I know half of 10 is going to be 5 for the radius. So I'm going to do radius squared. That means 5 times 5 times pi times the height, which is 9 over here. So I know 5 times 5 is 25. Times 3.14 is my 78.5. I'm multiplying that times the height, okay? I'm going to get 706.5 cubic centimeters for part C there. Okay, why don't you guys take a minute and try D, E, and F. If you have a question, speak up, and then we'll come back together and solve those together.
I need help with number 4.
Number 4 being D right here, this one.
Yeah.
Okay. So we know that 8 is the diameter, right? It's the distance all the way across. You don't want that. You want halfway across, which is the radius. So halfway across would be half of 8 or 4.
Show me.
The radius squared means 4 times pi. And that's the area of the base, the area of a circle, which is the base of a cylinder. And then you're going to multiply that by the height. And if you look at it carefully, it's 2.5. You have a decimal there. So I know 4 times 4 is 16. And you want to multiply 16 times 3.14. And you're going to get 50.24. And then multiply that by that 2.5. That's the height.
Okay.
I got 125.6. And you'd label this millimeters cubed. Let's look at E together. So this one, they give you what you want. They give you the radius halfway. So you just take that, 25 squared is 25 times 25, times 3.14, times the height, which is 40. So 25 times 25 is 625, times pi, times 40. So I'm going to have eventually 1,962.5 times 40, which is going to equal 78,500 even cubic centimeters. Okay, number F, they're trying to trick you again by giving you the diameter. That's not what you want for the area of a circle. You want half of that. You want from there to there. So half of 5 is going to be 2.5. And that's the radius, okay? So you want to square that. So I'm going to have 2.5 times 2.5 times 3.14 times the height, which is 17. So 2.5 times 2.5 is 6.25 times pi is going to equal 19.625 times the height. That's a decimal in there. And I got 333.625, and this is cubic centimeters. Okay. So let me come back to you. So hopefully in this lesson, you had a chance to review volume of a cylinder, and it reviewed several things. It helped you remember how to find the area of a circle, which is pi r squared. This lesson also reviewed the difference between diameter and radius. So remember, when you're finding the base of a right cylinder, the base is a circle. So that means that you have to use the area of a circle, pi r squared, 3.14 times the radius, and then simply times the height of the cylinder to find the volume. Now, this is going to be posted on the YouTube channel that I set up for you, and I also shared with you on It's Learning a link to my Google Drive math folder. So if you want to request permission to that, just click on it, and it'll say ask permission, and then I'll give you permission to open that folder, and then go down in that folder and find volume of cylinder. You'll find all the PDF files that I shared with you today. You can look at them again and focus on them, or watch the video and print out those files at home on your printer at home and work through them in that way if you wish. Or you can just watch this video again with some paper and a calculator and just work them out together as we go along. Whatever works best for you, I would just encourage you to open that link, ask for permission to my math Google Drive folder. It's found on It's Learning. And that way you can save any of those documents, any of those files, or you can print them out at your leisure. And I think for some of you, that might help a bit. Okay. So right now I'm going to turn off the recording option for this so you guys can just chit chat freely.